Good afternoon. My name's Enrico Vink. I'm the Managing Director of FIDIC, and I'm here with Vincent Aloop in London at the FIDIC Users Conference. And we've been reflecting on a lot of the changes to the FIDIC Rainbow suite of contracts, but perhaps less well known is that we've also been working on a suite of agreements, 3 new documents that FIDIC is bringing out. Is it just coincidental that we're also developing 3 new agreements to come out with 3 new works contracts?
Well, not really, Enrico. Actually, we are developing this new suite of agreements in line with the development of the new forms of works contracts. So basically what we have ensured through this new suite of agreement is to provide for harmonization of the wording and also harmonization of the concepts behind typically the entity acting as the engineer, either as a legal entity or the natural person acting for the engineer. So we have indeed wished to update the suite of agreements in conjunction with the update of the works contracts.
Because I notice there's always a lot of discussion about the role of the engineer to the contract, his independence, what is the relationship with the employer. And of course, through these documents, these agreements, we can actually specify in more detail that relationship.
Yes, indeed. It's always a very vivid subject and a very topical subject, because in the works contract, in the update of the Yellow Book, you have seen that we have this requirement for the engineer to act neutrally when he's making determinations. As we had before, the engineer is still under the requirement to certify amounts which are fairly due to the contractor on a monthly basis, if there are monthly installments. And there is also this requirement to make fair determination. So we have just reflected that matter also in a specific subclause of the White Book, which is now called Construction Administration, subclause 3.9, and where the engineer is act whenever he is exercising discretion in the works contract, or whenever he's certifying or making a determination, he is required to act fairly, as in between the employer and the contractor. And also exercising his independent professional judgment. So we made sure somehow that what we ask for the engineer to do in a White Book, typically in a client-consultant relationship, reflects what the engineer is asked to do under the Red Book, Yellow Book contract.
But with the Sub Consultancy Agreement, perhaps something less known to the market, FIDIC took some time to develop a sub-contract to match the Red Book, and now we have a Sub Consultancy Agreement. Is that designed to perform a similar function back to back with the main contract?
Yes, definitely. That's why it goes out together, and we have also the GV agreement going together. So typically the Sub Consultancy Agreement will be there for those acting as engineer under a works contract, for instance, having their engineer services being contracted with the client using a White Book, but being willing to subcontract some parts of their services. It might well be that you are talking about a large water treatment plant, for instance, where you have the engineer delivering most of the services, but he might be willing to subcontract some specific services such as automation or electromechanical design. He can do so using the Sub-Consultancy Agreement. There are back-to-back provisions with the White Book, but also the Sub-Consultancy Agreement has an additional feature, which means that it can be used whenever the main agreement is not the White Book. So we have made sure that there is this flexibility for the construction industry to be able to use...
In a lot of markets where they're not familiar with the White Book, but they could use these independently.
Exactly, yeah. So you could well be in a situation where the main consultancy agreement is not the White Book, but still you would use a Sub-Consultancy Agreement, just because we have not developed a mutatis mutandis approach in between the main consultancy services agreement and the Sub-Consultancy Services Agreement. So that basically the obligations of the White Book consultants are reflected again in the Sub-Consultancy form.
Okay, so we can show that we are focusing a lot more on the role of the consulting engineer and the new ways of working together, particularly in this global market, so we can also match the work going on with the main forms of contract.
Yes, definitely. We wanted to further stress that we ask the engineer basically to be acting fairly as in between the parties. That's something for which we got a strong feedback from the industry to further emphasize this fairness which is expected in between the parties, all in line with dispute prevention mechanism, because we at FIDIC level support the view that it's much better to deal fairly with any claim situation coming up rather than trying to keep it away for later on, because we all know that it only ends up in protracted disputes.
Well, that sounds like a perfect invitation for our audience out there to come and visit the next conference and learn more about it.
Yeah,
Thanks a
definitely.
lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.